Imagine moving to a new city and you're surrounded by a sea of choices. You ask your friends, your family, your colleagues, what's the best way to explore a city? Some would suggest you should explore the nightlife. Others would tell you to go and see monuments, temples. But if you ask me, the best way to explore a city, it's through its food. I mean, you can tell it by looking at me, right? Yeah. So for me, the best way to explore a city is through its rich food heritage. I mean, if you think about it, most of our cherished travel memories are around food. It needn't be just a simple restaurant, but it can be a chai tapri somewhere or a home cooked meal at somebody's house. My love for such adventures led me on a journey where I envisioned helping people explore a city through its food. The first thought of exploring a city through its food came to my mind when back in 2010, as a part of my master's course in responsible tourism management, I was touring. We went on a tour of the bustling borough market in London. Our guide took us around and fed us all British classics like fish and chips, sausage rolls, cider, and cake. This tour of the borough market left a very strong impression on my mind. I couldn't help reflecting, but the different types of culinary offerings the market have. And I couldn't help but compare it to our very own Mahatma Phule Mandai in Pune, the different vendors and all the small eateries around it. At this right moment, a thought of a food walk to explore Pune's cultural and culinary heritage came to my mind. After coming back to India, after coming back to India, I started my own travel venture with an idea of promoting Maharashtra's culture through various itineraries and experiential travel itineraries. A thought of a food walk would always be at the back of my mind, but skepticism would set in. I would think, why would people pay money to go and eat at restaurants? Also, why would people want to listen to me talk about the history of food in Pune? I was not a historian, neither was I a restaurant owner. But the one thing about Pune which kept the spark alive of a food walk is that Pune is a melting pot of cultures and communities, and hundreds of people migrate to the city every day. So I know I had an audience who would be interested in exploring the food, but I didn't know what was I going to say if at all I got the audience. My research obviously began at home with my mom and my grandmom, who have lived all their lives in Sadashivpet, which is the core area of Pune. They found this idea a bit weird, but at the same time, very unique. So they gave me a long list of restaurants in the old city and told me to go and explore them. Back in 2011, there were no Instagram reels about hidden gems in the city. So basically, my job was to go and explore these restaurants on my own. Some mentions here and there were about these old establishments, were in food guides, probably in a few news articles and a few blogs. But these news articles and blogs did not mention anything about the history of that place or the origin stories of the restaurants. So I thought to myself, if I could weave in a story of the restaurants, the owners of the restaurants, and curate the food which is to be eaten, that would be the USP of my walk. Obviously, it was easier said than done. The first hurdle was a psychological one, the famous or infamous Puneri attitude. I thought that if I go to a restaurant, I would be shooed away by an old uncle sitting at the counter. Probably I thought that the owners would be as rude as what people think Punekars are. Okay, so this perception quickly changed with the first person I met. This was Mr. Vishwanath Gogavle, who runs a 100-year-old ice cream shop by the name of Cold Drink House in Budhwarpet in Pune. A humble man, he told me how his grandfather started the Cold Drink House back in 1923 when ice creams and milkshakes were unheard of and seasonal. they started with sarbats and juices and eventually moved on to doodh cold drink, which means milkshake. Later started doing ice cream cold drink, which means a doodh cold drink with a scoop of ice cream. So this is the origins of Mastani, a quintessentially Puneri drink, which obviously the Mastani name came in later, but it originally called a simple ice cream cold drink. Cold Drink House is also one of the few or probably the only one restaurant in Pune which serves dahi ice cream and a dahi mastani. And they've been doing this since 1930. So this dahi ice cream is the predecessor to the present day froyo which we eat. So this was a eureka moment for me. I thought that this would form the crux of my food walks. In due course, I met the Sarpotdar family of the iconic Puna guest house, started in 1935, a Maharashtrian restaurant. I also met Mr. Atul Joshi, who is the third generation owner of a restaurant called Shri Krishna Bhuvan from 1942, which serves Puneri misal. While on the topic of misal, I would like to tell you that misal has no recipe. Each and every city in Maharashtra makes its own version of misal depending on the local produce available and people's personal tastes. So in Pune, you've got batatachi bhaji, chiuda, pohe, and shev. Or the curry, or the sample as we call it, may or may not have sprouts. Also in Pune, it is with sliced bread, not with pav. In fact, we don't call our misal pav, but just misal. Before independence, people used to eat misal with bhakaris, puris, and dahi. Bread came in later, but eventually it's always sliced bread and not pav. During the course of my research, I also came across a lot of Puneri Paa, which means boards which are hung outside restaurants, which say a lot of other things. But the one common thing at outside restaurants would be amchi kuthe shakha nahi, which means we don't have any other branches. Okay, so I used to always think that this is a sign of Puneri pride or Puneri attitude. But the restaurant owners told me that this is not that case. They fear that by opening more and more branches, they would compromise on the taste and the quality, which they feel is their legacy. So people often criticize them for that. But they have stuck to their guns. I mean, no wonder they have successfully managed to be in the food industry for more than hundreds of years, decades, and in some cases a century. After acquainting myself with the establishments of the old city, next on the agenda was the cantonment area, or camp as we call it. This area is actually a mix of, is home to a mix of communities, Marathis, Parsis, Jews, Iranis, Bori Muslims, among others. So the food here is actually a beautiful mix of cultures and communities. My paternal grandmother actually is born and raised in camp. So she promptly told me to go and meet Mr. S.M.M. Irani, who runs a bakery called Hussaini Bakery on Tabut Street. Dr. Irani, or Hussaini Uncle now as I call him, he proudly showed me old pictures of his grandfather when he started the bakery in 1932. He also showed me pictures of the bakery during the 1971 war, where they gave free food to people. Then he took me on a tour of the bakery and showed me the wood-fired ovens live in action. They are managed by a staff which basically has worked with him for more than 30 to 40 years. He also promised that he would graciously open the doors of his bakery to the participants of my food walk. This experience of actually visiting a vintage bakery and also seeing the wood-fired ovens live in action is one of the highlights of my tour. After acquainting myself with the restaurants, with the owners and the food, I announced my first food walk in November 2013, which was signed up by around 25 people. So one thing which I have taken away from these walks is that I was one of the very few people to do a walk like this in the whole country. There were a few walks here and there happening, but a curated, designated old city food walk was happening for the first time probably. A year later, I also started doing the cantonment snack walk. So now I have 2 walks in the city. So the one thing which I sort of take away from these walks is that food is a great leveler. It is nostalgic, it is inclusive. So for example, when I'm offering dadpe pohe, a tea time snack made from flattened rice, which is an essentially Marathi dish, each and every person on the food walk finds, from different states of the country, finds a similar recipe which their grandmothers or mothers would make. It doesn't happen with just dadpe pohe, it happens with a lot of other dishes as well. So on my food walks, people go away with more than their tummies full, some knowledge about the food which they have eaten, some interesting stories, some inspiring stories of the restaurant owners, and of course, some nostalgia. There's always an, oh, I never knew this moment on the walks. My hunger for such food experiences grew literally and figuratively, and I started thinking about different sort of destinations which can be explored through food. Probably the first thing which came to my mind was Konkan, which is the Maharashtra's coastal belt, also where my roots lie. So now I offer some very experiential offbeat food experiences in Konkan. This include a mango picking and tasting tour in Ratnagiri, where we have a lot of curated meals here and there. So the picture on the left which shows that. And then we also have the Popti party, which is happens in Alibag area. So we have a Popti party experience in Srivardhan and hopefully a soon to be launched culinary trail in and around Alibag. So it has been almost 10 years since I did my first food walk, and I've done hundreds after that. But the one thing which sort of I take away from these walks is the camaraderie between like-minded strangers who bond over food. These strangers actually have now become friends, some close, lifelong friends who are here to support me today. So we are now a community of food lovers who strictly abide by the rule, half fork will travel. We are now, so I hope this talk has tickled your taste buds enough, and we are also close to lunch. And I want you guys to go out and explore your city through the food heritage or any other destinations through its food heritage. Thank you.